to introduce our first talk. When I was prepping his intro, you don't know who it is, it was on the website. I actually realized that we have a lot of things in common. I think we both spent a good few years of our lives in Dublin. Both of us, if you read our names on paper, I think the last thing you expect is an Irish accent to come in the end. And I asked Christos for a fun fact, and he told me that once he made a video of his cat that went viral and he got 7 million views. I don't have a cat, so we don't have that in common. The other thing we have in common is that we were both really passionate about design systems, but only one of us works for a design system that serves a product that is used by over 2 billion people. Yeah, that's incredible. So yeah, I'm talking about Christos Kastritis. Did I get it right? Yeah, who is a soft product designer here at Meta, and he's going to be telling us all about design systems the WhatsApp way. I'll give it up for Christos. Thank you.
Hello. Oh, my cat is no longer making TikToks. If that's what you were wondering, it was a one-time deal. Fame got to his head a little bit. So I'm going to share a couple things about design systems at WhatsApp. Whether you're a small team, a big team, or just starting out, hopefully there'll be a couple of tidbits that you'll pick up and then you can use within your own work. So I'm Christos. I'm a staff product designer at WhatsApp, and I've been dabbling within design systems for the last 7 or so years. It's quite a long time, actually. But I guess I really like the variety of the work that we get to do and the reach and the impact that we can do. It's pretty exciting. Of course, I have to explain what WhatsApp is. If you don't use it, nothing against you. There's some other good apps out there as well. But really, what we're trying to do is connect the world privately. So we try to build messaging and calling that feels simple, reliable, and private, and that's pretty much it. We want people to be themselves, speak freely, and just feel close to those important connections. And I think it's worked pretty well so far. There's more than 2 billion people use our products every day in a lot of countries, and for me, I usually feel like quite a sense of pride, but also like as a design systems person, it's absolutely terrifying because anything that can go wrong will go wrong, and it affects billions of people, not just like a couple of folks. So yeah, that's like pretty tough, but WhatsApp has predominantly had these product principles, design principles that have really gotten us to where we are. Some of the really interesting things is just around native. We're mostly a mobile predominant app, and we think about products very differently for each individual platform. With as a design systems, that's like your ultimate nightmare, is having like looks and feels and patterns that are completely different across every single platform. But we're trying to get away from there a little bit. And you're probably wondering, Christos, when did design systems start at WhatsApp? And it was a lot sooner than you would think. I joined back in 2020 as a contractor just to figure out what the hell design systems would look like. And it wasn't really until 18 months, 2 years ago, that we officially became a cross-functional team. And now we're at the point where we're doing some pretty interesting stuff that I'm excited to share. Our team is, I would say, quite interesting and maybe a little bit different to most teams. We are the foundation and brand team. So we are made up of product designers that typically focus within design systems, but it's not the only thing that we do. We have brand designers, creative directors. These are folks that think about the brand experience within product. And I find that us being part of the same team works pretty damn good. Works pretty good. We have quite a few engineers, 9, 10. And we focus mostly, while we're multi-platform, we focus mostly on Android and iOS. That's where we put our big bets into. Our team's purpose is really to evolve the look and feel of our products, to simplify the core experience, and to grow our design system through different tools and infrastructures, depending on the needs of our organization. And we support quite a few people. Like you're probably thinking, Christos, what the hell? How is there 100 designers within WhatsApp? There are 100 designers in WhatsApp, thousands of engineers, and we provide the typical things that most design system teams provide. So I won't get into that too much, but WhatsApp is on a lot of platforms. Wear OS, VR, like really? Mac, Windows, all these other different platforms that we have to think about. But like I said, we focus mostly on Android and iOS. That's where the real value is. So in terms of like one thing I'm really proud of with our team is just our reach and our influence within our org. We've gotten to the point where we're kind of up here. We focused within design first. We're a design-led organization, or at least we're at some point. And then dabbled into engineering, and now we're impacting marketing, data science, insights, product, lots of other little spaces, which is really the place to be. But of course, we started very slow, and it was during a bleak 2020 in COVID. And we were just here, just in that little bubble there. It was me as a contractor, one full-time designer, and about 15 designers. Those were simpler times. In terms of our influence, it was quite minor. There wasn't a whole lot that we could do in a sense. A lot of designers, while they appreciated the thought of design systems, were not familiar with design systems. And so building trust took us quite a long while. But fortunately, we had a sponsor. Our head of design was the one that saw the value and the potential of our team and really kept us pushing forward. So, during this period, we were mostly a support-oriented team, but there wasn't like actual products that we could ship yet. So we focused on some of the more important aspects. I joined at a time when everyone at Meta used Sketch. Have you tried to move people from Sketch to Figma or vice versa? It's so hard, so hard. And then you learn how they were designing things in the past. Like, oh my God. We ran quite a few different surveys to just understand, like, how the hell do you design? Like, what do you really need? And like, how can we serve you best? And a lot of that, like with most design systems, it's building component libraries. But we built, oh, that was my alarm to take my contact eye drops, but I'll have to wait a little bit. So yes, we focused on component libraries, but again, we didn't have components to provide. So we focused on what people needed the most within the current WhatsApp experience today. Whether it made you question lots of different things, we just wanted to provide what was there, and that seemed to work quite well. One of the things with being on or focusing on Android and iOS and different mobile platforms is, we actually relied quite a lot on iOS and the material guidelines, which if you're a small team, I would definitely recommend. It answered a lot of questions that teams needed, and it helped us pivot and focus on some different kinds of problems. And of course, we started our office hours very early into the process, and to really just understand what kind of questions people are asking, what they were running into, and if there was different opportunities for us to explore in the long run. And so building trust was definitely, again, it took time. We had to accept that, ad hoc requests and support, we had to embrace that a little bit. So if someone just pinged you out of the blue, you were on it. You were there to sort their problems out. We managed to build a bit more trust during different collaborative workshops. So different teams were working on different visions. So we would go in there, share our expertise, and build trust gradually that way. But I think the really exciting thing for us was, even though we didn't have any engineers, we were able to pivot towards certain business priorities, such as the Android app refresh that we did back in 2021. So all of those colors that changed, that was me. So it meant that we were able to like bring in product impact really early into the journey of our design systems team, which definitely brought us a lot of advantages, but it brought us a lot of challenges too. Starting grassroots is really hard. Trying to build that value, that limited scope that you have to do things, especially if you've been on design systems teams before where you've had like much more interest, or like a bigger team, it's definitely challenging. And even like us pivoting towards those different business priorities, like doing an app refresh is like super challenging, by the way. But also like for us, we were questioning whether that was what a design systems team should be doing. Shouldn't we be focusing on like building out the foundations and working on different components? And normally the answer is yes, but this is what the company needed, and we had the skill set to give them that. And so it worked out for us. But now we're getting to the point where we're starting to feel like a bit of a real team. I don't know if you know that meme. This is like my take on it. You do? Yeah. I see a few faces, a few nods. Nice. And so now we've kind of gone through the stage of design know what we're up to. They appreciate our work. They always ask us for help. But the engineering space, that's when things get really, really interesting. And, early 2021, or actually I'd say it was probably about halfway into 2021, we started, no, 2022. I don't know, I'm mixing up my years. It's been a long time. We started in iOS, and we're still trying to figure out what the hell our team's going to look like. How are we going to be structured? How are we going to grow in the long term? But what you might notice is that our design work grew really, really fast within this time period. So we're still a team that don't have much of an offering beyond like Figma libraries that we don't actually own or maintain the code. And the designers went up from 15 to 50. You're like, Jesus Christ, this is so many more questions, so many more support that we need to provide. And it's pretty overwhelming. But like I said, influence was pretty good among design. Like they saw the value that we were bringing. But awareness beyond that was very challenging. I feel like this is where a lot of us get really stuck and also just, like I said, figuring out what our team looks like. But we had 2 sponsors instead of 1. We had someone from engineering, and that made all the difference. So now we're starting to get to the point where we're figuring out, okay, what kind of components are we going to build? And now we can start providing our own documentation, our own stamp. We know what the problems are in the org. We know what to prioritize. And we also want to increase our support channels. So like, where are people reaching out to us? Where are the gaps? Some people are really introverted and don't want to go to office hours and talk on a VC. Some people just want to send you a question. You need to have places for all those different things. Building trust. There was a lot we had to do during this period. It's so overwhelming. Like no matter what size team you are, this is really hard. Figuring out what your vision is, getting feedback from a larger group. This was a big thing that we did. So anything that we were working on, we didn't keep it to ourselves. We got involved in the typical design process in our org, which were design reviews, builder reviews, and we would try and get that feedback from everyone. And it really helped us figure out like communicating the value of each component that we're working on and getting buy-in that way. And then also just talking about quality, like what the hell is quality? Everyone has different opinions of what that is. And so I'll share a little bit more about like how we were framing that and how it worked out for us. And yeah, understanding success, like how many times have you seen posts or threads about like communicating the value of your design system? It's like the hardest thing in the world. But this is what our team vision was back at this point. So we wanted to structure it in a way that had a clear set of sub goals that we could achieve during each phase of our team. So the building blocks, focusing on new development, where the new problems were that we could help solve, and then get into a stage where we had system maturity. Is this still totally accurate? I don't know, man. If I go back, I'd probably change a few things, but this is what we did. We're probably somewhere in the middle of the latter two. That's kind of where we're at the moment. This is how we talked about prioritizing the things that we were building. So we focused on demand, wanted to understand what kind of patterns we were seeing across different design reviews, what people are coming to us with. Are people trying to build very similar things? If so, that's like the best place to start instead of building like very typical components that will get used eventually, but you probably don't need to do it right now. And also, how universal is this thing that we are building? Can it be used across enough services? What is the potential within it? And then being a mobile-oriented team, what kind of ambiguity is there with like existing documentation? Like, are there gaps there that we can pivot towards and solve those kinds of problems? And that was kind of how we talked about why we did certain things. And then even just talking about quality, we had like lots of really long docs explaining, this is the craft, this is usability, this is performance, etc. But those things are just really hard to explain to people that have no concept of design systems or have their own concept of design systems, and we just summarize it down to 5 points, really, which I'm sure you'll all agree is pretty straightforward stuff. For us, our focus was really on communicating the, I'd say just how jam-packed the components that we build, so making sure things work with dynamic type. So many people at WhatsApp use large font sizes, use different modes, different accessibility settings. So we built a tool to demonstrate all of that. Anyone at WhatsApp could add their component to this library and test all of these different controls and know upfront if this thing's even working or not. What is success? That is it's like the meaning of life within design systems. And I think it varies depending on your org and how you sit and what people care about. But these were some of the things that we had envisioned starting out. This is what I wanted us to focus on. And I think it was important to be real about what we feel is really impactful and what is maybe not so impactful, but still great at communicating the value of your system. And it really depends on what stage you are at within your team. But I always found different things that were affecting the customer, different ways of impact tracking was where like the secret sauce is at. Same for tech debt too. Our company really cares about tech debt, app size, crash rate, stuff like that. So we made sure we were able to talk about those different things. These are just some examples that we use to communicate our work, track Figma usage across different designers and seeing if people are actually using them more, if they're being more productive. How are we doing support-wise? Like, are we making any optimizations and showing our breadth of impact so that like this last year we were able to support 370 different projects in comparison to 250 the year before and then 88 the year before that. So those are really powerful things that you can just talk about in one line. Same for tech debt. There's like so much different ways you can talk about this, and these are just some of the examples of how we talk about things. And we don't talk about them all at the same time. It just depends on what's important in that moment. Same for time efficiencies. You can talk about really simple things like introducing tokens or modes within Figma. You know, like for us, we had separate libraries for light mode and dark mode. And if you ask the designer to do the whole screen in dark mode, it would take a very long time. So, you know, 15 minutes to 5 seconds, sweet. Or you could be a little bit more whimsical and talk about if they built buttons to the same level of rigor that we did, it would take you 164 years, which is probably not completely true, but you get the point, right? It's trying to communicate that narrative of the value and then it's just work that goes into what we do. Same for impact tracking. There's certain infrastructure projects, certain component migrations, visual refreshes. These are super powerful. And for us, that's how we've been talking about it for the last year. And it's meant that we, let me see if it works. Meant that we actually haven't had to focus on some of these other aspects yet. But I think as our system grows, we'll probably be revisiting some of those things again. And some of the big challenges was, you know, the expectations on our team were so much higher. We weren't just this little cute team in the corner. We were now our own pillar, being compared to like hundreds of different people that were doing the same processes that we had to do, which was so hard. And even just transitioning from a support focused team to execution focused is really difficult because you care about supporting everyone, but you also have to focus on your own projects and keep making sure that those are moving as well. And that was quite a hard moment for us as well. And even just with WhatsApp, like WhatsApp scaled so much while we were there, but we were still a little team at this point. And just the velocity of what they were shipping, what we were able to catch and what we were able to support, we were still behind. And I think the hardest thing is really just stakeholders, man, and just misunderstanding how we were talking about different things. We kind of went in with the assumption that everyone gets design systems, so we're just going to talk about it in one way. But we learned the hard way that, you know, an eng director will care about things differently compared to a product director. Same for a design director, and it's okay to talk about your design system in a different lens depending on who you're speaking with. And yeah, that's be like the number one thing. Talk about your design system in different ways to different people, and you will have less misery, maybe. Now we're getting to like the fun stage where we're starting to expand our scope a little bit. We started to take on a lot more bigger, meatier projects that people really just didn't think that we could do, and we did it. So yeah, now we're beyond the lens of engineering. We're looking into that amazing spectrum of product and insights and all these lovely fellas that don't know an absolute thing about design systems. So it's an exciting place to be, really. And our team grew quite a bit. We're at 15 now instead of 4. And our influence was looking pretty good right now. We've proven ourselves time and time again that we are drivers of change, that we can do things that other teams within WhatsApp aren't able to do. And they look to us to take these things on, which means that your opinion adds a lot more weight. You have a lot more say in how you want to drive WhatsApp or your own company as a whole. I mean, you're just one perspective, but your perspective matters. And I think that's just kind of nice. And just having lots of sponsors within different parts of the org. So there's people in accessibility, in marketing. They all saw the value that we brought. They all saw the potential of what we could do to spearhead things and move WhatsApp as a design organization forward. So some of the things we did in terms of design support, again, we weren't able to focus on it as much in this period, but tokens and variables, I'm sure you're all very big on tokens right now. Pizza. Sorry, I forgot my lactose tablets. Anyway, tokens and variables, that's a really big thing we did this year. We've wanted to do it for a really long time, but again, it's all about finding the right opportunity to do these things and not having to do it straight away just because the feature came out last week. Now, we used this as a time to streamline our Figma libraries. We had quite a few Figma libraries. We wanted to make that much more tidy and make people really aware of like, this is actually owned by our team and this is just WhatsApp product, right? And with doing all these really big product initiatives, we wanted to make sure that our support channels were still being looked after. So we did quite a few different things to look at optimizing that. And of course, workshops. Workshops are your best friends. Just show people in person how it works. Let them try out different things and then they'll remember it forever. Or maybe if you do it just before Christmas and they come back in the new year, they won't, which is what I did. I'm kidding, most of them got it. So at this point with us, what we did to build trust, we focused on multiple app-wide component and infrastructure migrations. And the way we were trying to frame it was these things can unlock bigger initiatives for us and the org. So that was kind of our segue. And we were at a point, where we were able to drive a new design direction and vision, which I can't show any screenshots of because we're still testing it. But if your app is a little different, I'll say no more. And we were getting to the point where we were starting to build a lot of excitement internally and externally, that was pretty good. And then even just helping out in places where we didn't before, especially on the engineering front, our org, our WhatsApp really cares about better engineering. There was lots of like optimizations that we could do in their own time while design were focusing on different kinds of problems. And that just added so much more weight to what we were doing. I don't know how many teams migrate their components across the entire app, but this is kind of how we talked about it, at least. It's always so much more complicated than you think, but we tried to break things down into what the kind of visual impact was, if this fragmentation was acceptable or unacceptable. If this is something that's being migrated across your core services, it's probably unacceptable or acceptable. I don't know, I'm confusing myself. And even just the feasibility, something that might feel really simple or look easy to migrate there's probably 5 or 10 different variations of that component in your code base. And that's one thing you need to do your investigation upfront and really communicate that. And all of these things play a key role in just estimating how long these things will take. And we prioritize things a little differently. So pillars were now doing their own visions at the start of the year, which gave us an opportunity to see what teams were thinking about upfront, if there was any patterns there for us, and opportunities for us to prioritize throughout the year. And the same goes for what kind of components are heavily used across our app that can help WhatsApp feel more modern. But more importantly, are there opportunities out there that will help us unlock bigger things? And are these things that we've had on our radar for a while? Most of the time, the answer is yes. How are we doing time-wise? Oh, my stopwatch is not working. So some of the challenges, this was a year where WhatsApp really wanted to focus on efficiency, and doing efficiency right with purpose and intentionality was really difficult for us. And we also felt that at times we were neglecting other parts of our system. So when it comes to documentation, Figma maintenance, like evolving those, were kind of left behind during this period. And one of the other things, if you're doing like really big migrations or refreshes or anything of that nature, like regressions hit hard. So like metrics going up and down and all the time that it takes to fix those is really difficult. But I feel like we've learned a lot about how to fix those up front. So yeah, be aware about that. Things are going to take longer than you think they'll take. And it wouldn't be a design systems talk without talking about building natively versus custom. We've kind of reached a point where we've stretched how much like what comes out of the box works for us. And WhatsApp, because we have so many people that use our products, we have to support so many different iOS versions as well. So it means like all the cool stuff that comes out, we have to wait like 2 or 3 years, and that's not really nice. That's not all. There's a couple of things I'll wrap up with, just a couple little takeaways. I feel like I've probably talked too long, and I'm sorry, but I would say just don't be a yes person. It's so easy to say yes and help people all the time, but you really have to say no and focus on the right things. Make the smart choices. What are the things that can help you build trust right now? Is this project even the right moment to pick this thing up? Most of the time, the answer is probably no. And the design system's life is non-linear. You don't have to focus on all the foundations, all these different components, and then start getting adoption. Honestly, like any other product team, it's spaghetti, right? Everything is all over the place. But as long as you're thinking about what the company really needs and how you can best pivot to that. And even just when it comes to process, I found that like when we tried to do so much process up front, all these new docs, they all just kind of sat there and started gathering dust. And like the art of creating it was great, but the upkeep wasn't really efficient for us. So I think just like figure out what you really need and just being like, it's okay to be scrappy. I really like this one. Be a magpie. Look for the shiny things. Look for the things that will build stakeholder buy-in. These are usually like the business priorities. Again, I'll keep saying business, but it's so important for design systems. And these are usually problems that can unlock bigger initiatives for your org and are just really cool to work on as well. And for me, this has been the best way for us to build trust and impact within our org. So it doesn't always have to be components, but sometimes it can be. And yes, building natively versus custom. I could probably write a thesis on this, but basically the answer is it depends. Personally, I think native isn't for everyone. It can be inefficient at scale. It drives me nuts. But if you're a small org starting out, you're trying to get a design system up and running, I think this is like a really powerful place to start. It gets your product teams thinking about platform standards. Even if it doesn't look exactly the same, I think there's a lot of paradigms there that you should leverage. Whereas custom kind of starts to give you more control at scale, fewer growing pains, but it has less out of the box support. So, like when we talk about accessibility and all the little controls and things that you probably forget about sometimes. And I think it's just a matter of where you draw the line. Like, do you want to look native? Do you want to feel native? Or do you want to use the actual SDK and code base? And these are some things to like really think about before you start. And yeah, I know we talk about adoption a lot in design systems, but I've always wondered, like, have you just tried migrating it yourself? I know a lot of teams maybe aren't in the position to do that. And yes, you build much less components, but you do gain a deeper understanding of the app, how it works, and probably realize just how awful it is. You get to build rapport with teams early. You're talking to them way earlier than you might before, and you just get a sense of just like how product teams actually ship work. Like when we pivoted, we realized, oh my god, like we've been doing things totally different. But I think the closer you align to how your product works, it just makes a lot of that conversation easier and mitigates some of that rogueness up front, and that helped us gain a lot of respect as well. I think when we talk about design systems, what's helped with us is to talk about the outcomes, not the activity itself. So like one of the things we worked on this year was implementing a unified multi-platform color system that addressed over 9,000 color aliases. That was a hard project. And while that sounds really cool, really what it did is it unlocked lots of new fun initiatives and just broader platform adoption. And that's kind of the way to think about things when you're talking about it to people that don't really know what the system is. And I will end, this is the last slide, everyone. I will end with empathy. We build systems for people. I don't know if you've tried to do some product work lately, but it's really hard. And you're using your own components day to day, and it's definitely made me realize a couple of things. And work is hard for everyone. Everyone's working on multiple projects, probably have lots of expectations and deadlines to meet. So if someone detaches your component and forgets about it, just loosen up, man. Loosen up. Unless it's a bad one, unless it's a really, really bad one, then probably put your foot in there. But I think a lot of the time we can probably just let it slide for a little bit. unless there's a pattern, unless we're seeing a lot of people doing very similar things, then that's something to keep an eye on. And I will stop talking now. Thank you for putting up with my Irish nonsense. I will open the floor to any questions.
Working? Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Christos.
I still stand here?
I have, yeah, you are. If you are
So
up for
front
a
and
few
center.
questions, are you okay to take a few questions?
I would love some questions.
Oh, lovely. Anyone
They
here?
might not like my answers, but
Anyone? Oh, so many. I'll go here first.
Thanks for your talk. It's great. How would you, if you were going to carve the cake, how much of the cake is the craft of design system, and how much of it is the kind of sales and politics of getting the thing off the ground? In your view, in your world.
I think it really depends on. It depends on how do I frame this? I could say this so many different ways, but I think it depends on the maturity of your org, both as a design discipline and as a product. And I think for us, I will say if you're in a much larger org, there's a lot more people you need to talk to. There's a lot more people you need to convince. And so naturally, there's a lot of politics that come with that. Same with certain initiatives. Some people will care more about that. And again, that's more politics that you have to deal with. I think starting off within design systems is the best place to position yourself as teams of craft. And I would say just trying to keep doing that is the main thing. But it's definitely easy to get sideways with the politics, and that's part of it, right? Like, you're trying to communicate your value, and you want the business to care about the work that you're doing, and sometimes politics gets more in the way of craft. But I would say, in a lot of stuff that we build, when we built it at the time, we thought, yeah, this is great, this is sorted, we won't have to deal with this again. You'll probably have to deal with it in 6 months time, or a year's time, or 2 months time. The needs, etc., will grow quite a bit. But I'd say craft is something we do really care about, but it's a really hard thing to even have product teams do at the level that we probably have. I like to think that as design systems teams, it's on us a lot of times to hold that really high bar. I think the more we can help other teams get to that level via different tools or different kinds of automation, that's the way we should probably go. That's not something we do really well at WhatsApp in terms of tooling and automation. It's something I'm really keen on us prioritizing. That is the long-winded answer. Who's next? Do we have time for more?
Yeah, we
It's
have
kind of
time
fun.
for one more. Sorry, I think they had a hand up first.
Behind
Thank you. I joined a bit late. You might have answered this question. How do you measure? I mean, I have hundreds of questions to ask, but if I have to choose one, how do you measure the adoption of your design system?
I mean, the simplest place to start is something like call sites, where you're just getting a literal number of where these things or how much of this is being adopted, but it doesn't paint the whole picture. It doesn't tell you where it's being adopted. Is it being adopted on the right services? One thing we're trying to try this year is just visual coverage. So are the core services of our product being adopted by our design system? If so, how much? That's a bit more straightforward than talking about just a number. That's what we're trying to do at the moment. But like I said, a lot of the projects we've been doing have been focused on app-wide migration. So naturally, the adoption is going to be pretty high for a lot of things.
You get in asking all the hard questions, adoption and politics.
I want more hard questions. Talk to me afterwards.
Cool. Oh, appreciate it. There's lots of questions here, but we also have folks online. So maybe I'll ask a question from those that shared on Miro. So there's a question here around advice for a design system team lacking visibility to increase their impact. So do you have any tips, advice?
Lacking visibility.
Yeah, within the organization.
I suppose I would ask, where are they sharing their work? Maybe there's certain places that it's not being shared. Even if I think for us, we ran into that as well. We didn't want things to just be an echo chamber. If your design team has all hands, if there's product meetups, anything like that, use any opportunity to go in and talk about your work and explain what it is. Try to find certain sponsors or stakeholders that really care about your work and funnel it up to them. Like really, that's what, if there's a manager, if there's a lead on your team, that's what they should be doing too, is really just spreading the word.
Finding your allies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank
Finding all
you.
your friends.
I'm seeing the question here, and I'm wondering if it's from someone from my team in work. They're asking because we go through. You spoke a little bit about support there, and we go through a lot of challenges on managing support. So the question here is, how do you prioritize support from teams to ensure that you're getting enough time to focus on improving the assets, the libraries, and documentation?
Yeah. I think about what we did, and I don't know if it worked super well, but it's worked pretty good so far, is we all committed like a certain amount of capacity that we wanted to dedicate towards support. So we said 80% of our time is on product work, 20% is towards support. Then we tried to figure out how are we supporting teams, like what are those channels? So we do like a group where people can post questions. We rotate who answers those questions. What else do we do? Same with our office hours. We don't all go to office hours. We rotate that as well. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, one thing that actually worked really well for us, we started doing like async feedback where people could just go to a sign-up sheet and just leave a link to a Figma, and we check it in 2 days or so. So it gave us a bit of a window where like your thing might not be answered right now, but that's where we were pushing people. So we didn't want people to ping us directly. We'd say, have you tried going to office hours, or have you tried going to async feedback? And actually that like really helped a lot when we were trying to do some of the bigger projects. And we actually noticed that more people ended up using our async feedback, which is why our support metrics went up so much. Like the same amount of people were coming to office hours, but the same amount were signing up, you know. I would say try and consider different, you know, like more async ways of getting that support and pushing people. Don't be afraid to push them. You know, if someone pings you directly, just say no. Go here. I'll get back to you in 2 days. I know it doesn't sound nice, but you have to do it sometimes. You have to look after yourself as well and your own team.
Yes, certain things you have to do to drive the adoption, but then after you can put more guardrails, I suppose.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much. Everyone, give it up for Christos. Thank you so much.